Hey Luke, it's your dad again. So today I wanted to show you where I live at the moment. I don't think I'll be living here much longer, maybe a few more months. But I've been living in a very little town called Pleasant Unity, which is just about 5 miles south of Greensburg. And this is actually my apartment complex. It used to be an old schoolhouse a long time ago. It's actually a rather nice area. And as you can see here, there's a little memorial. Looks like an honor roll of students from some time ago. I'm not exactly sure. You can see that the address is 2101, and this is on State Route 130. So I live in an apartment among there. And today I wanted to go for a walk. The nice thing about this apartment is that it's located right next to a park. You can see that there's a volunteer fire department right there. Sometimes whenever they're called, even in the early hours of the morning, I get the joy of hearing the fire alarm go off, which obviously is pretty loud. But yeah, in the back here is the public park, and lately some baseball players have been practicing, using the field as a practice field. I don't know if they actually play official games here or not. I haven't seen an official game played. But yeah, it's a rather nice area. Whenever I was growing up with my parents, that would be your Nana and Pa, we lived in Shalocta, Pennsylvania. And that town is actually only about 10 minutes away from where you're living right now. It's a nice country area. I always liked growing up in places that didn't have a lot of other houses around. I always liked nature. And the privacy, knowing that you don't have strange people always looking in on you. And I get that here. For the most part, I haven't had any too tough of situations. There have been a couple times where I heard some loud noises and I thought somebody might be trying to do mischief or they were up to no good, but nothing ever came of it. So yeah, it's really nice to have a place like this just behind where I'm living. But like I said, it might be within this year or maybe the beginning of next year that I find a new apartment, because as I said in the earlier video, right now I'm working at Mars, Pennsylvania. And Mars is about a 1.5 hour drive away from my current house. So obviously that's quite a distance. The reason why I'm living here at the moment is because I used to have a job in this area whenever I worked at Accessibilities, and it was only about a 5-mile drive from this apartment to where I worked. But now I have a new job, seemingly permanent job, and so I might have to move closer to Mars. But yeah, as I said, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself growing up, specifically my early childhood, and even my closest friend and friends that I made whenever I was in elementary school. My first real close friend, and actually the one I would consider my best friend until 8th grade, His name was R.J. Wagner. And he actually, several years after we met, he told me how we met. I had forgotten exactly how we had met, but he remembered that in one of our classes in elementary school, we went to Ben Franklin Elementary School in Indiana, Pennsylvania, that there was a boy named Brian Nagy, and he was playing a video game. I don't know if it was a Tiger handheld video game. You might be able to hear of those still today, or else look them up online. Or else he was playing a Game Boy, which did exist at that time. It wasn't too old. It was a rather new and popular system still at that time. He was playing a video game, and RJ and I both looked over his shoulder and watched him play the video game, and then we started talking. And without even knowing, that was basically how we began our friendship, which would be extremely close for many years. Basically throughout all of elementary school, he was my one close friend. I would usually go to his house to play every weekend. I remember I would always anxiously await the phone call on a Saturday morning, and RJ's voice would be on the other end. That was long before cell phones. You only had the one land phone in the whole house, and you waited for that call. And I remember he would always say, "Hey Ben, it's RJ. I was wondering if you wanted to come over and play today." And I would always ask my mom, "Mom, can I go to RJ's house and play?" And she would always say yes. And either she would usually drive me to his house, I believe, and then his mom would take me home whenever we were done playing. But we would usually spend an entire Saturday together playing, usually at his house. And we had all sorts of fun. I remember we would play with squirt guns. He also lived in a nice country area that had big fields. And we would play in his woods, or go around the neighborhood. I remembered we would go around his neighborhood at Halloween time. I loved to go trick-or-treating with him. And we would go door to door and collect candy dressed up as whatever fun characters we chose. And obviously we were into video games. Video games was how we met, being that we met while watching Brian Nagy play a video game. And I remember he was the first one that actually got the original Nintendo Entertainment System. And again, that is something that you should probably even still hear of today, because the Nintendo company is still thriving. They're still doing well. They've recently released a Wii U and then the Nintendo Switch, but their very first console was the Nintendo Entertainment System, and RJ was the first one to get that. And I just remember going over to his house, and we would play Mario Brothers or Legend of Zelda, and we would just be so amazed at the graphics. And we just had so much fun. And there were a lot of times that I did get to enjoy sleepovers at his house. Usually if we had a sleepover, he would invite me over Friday evening after school, and then I would sleep over into Saturday. And then I would go home Saturday night so that I could make it to meeting on Sunday. But yeah, he was really my only regular friend throughout elementary school. And some other things that I got involved in while I was in elementary school, I think it was my dad who actually introduced me to baseball. As you can see here, this is the baseball field where the kids today practice for their games. He got me into baseball. I believe I started in 3rd grade. I was in minor league. And then I also played Little League baseball through 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And I did really enjoy baseball. I think of all of the team sports, it was the one that I had the most fun at. It was the one that I tried my best in. And I remember being all excited my 6th grade year. There were only like a couple games left in the last season of what would be the last season of my life, and I had finally hit a home run in a championship game. It was my one and only home run that I ever hit. And I think we were already beating the other team by over 10 points, so it didn't really matter, but I was excited about that home run. But I had also tried playing basketball whenever I was in elementary school, and RJ played basketball with me. There was basically a league that anyone in the school could join. And so basically if you signed up, you were able to play basketball. But then there was also a tournament league that you had to try out for. And if you were good enough, you got to make the tournament team. I believe it was at least in my 6th grade year that I did make the tournament team, but I was an alternate, because usually the team consisted of 10 main players, and then there were 2 alternates that if they wanted to throw you in, they would. And I do remember I did get some play time, and I even remember making a basket. I had only gotten to play for like a minute, so as soon as I got the ball, I remember being determined I am going to shoot this ball because I will never get another chance. And I remember I made the basket. The coach was upset that I had made the shot. I was at roughly the foul line, and he thought I should have taken it in closer to the basket or passed it off to someone, but I didn't care about that. I got the ball and I wanted to shoot it, and I made it, and he took me out anyway. So I only got my little 2 minutes of fame, but I do remember that. So whenever junior high came around, that was whenever, unfortunately, RJ had to move away. It was in 8th grade. His dad had gotten a job somewhere in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and it was obviously a promotion. He was going to get paid a lot more than what he was making before that, but in order for him to do that, his family had to move away. And I remember that was a very sad time for me, because I was still basically only close friends with RJ. And I remember in junior high, it's not exactly very easy to make new friends at that time, because a lot of the friends or the kids are already in these little groups already in these cliques, and it would be really hard to work your way in. And growing up, I was always a shy person anyway. I never was really outspoken. I would always usually keep to myself. Even to this day, I think I am largely a shy person. And I would just have a hard time striking up a conversation with new people in a new place. But thankfully, RJ had a couple of other friends at that time. And their names were Luke and Jared. And whenever RJ left, they were losing their friend, because they had spent a lot of time with RJ. I don't believe they spent nearly as much time as I did with him up to that point. But they were losing their friend, and there I was, and I just sort of got brought into their group. And so I lost one friend, but I gained 2. And so all throughout junior high, mainly starting in 8th grade, and then throughout my senior year, 12th grade, Luke and Jared were my 2 closest friends, and they, I remember, got me into Star Wars, which is still popular today. Just recently, I went to see the new latest Star Wars movie called Solo, a Star Wars story. It's about the origin of Han Solo, and obviously now the Star Wars franchise is owned by Disney. It used to be owned by its original creator, George Lucas, but I think most Star Wars fans are happy that he is no longer in charge of it, because when he started making the original prequel movies, it seemed that he himself had turned to the dark side, and he was just bringing in all sorts of stuff that was not right. So we're happy that he's out, and glad that Disney now has control over the Force and the Star Wars universe. But yeah, they got me into collecting Star Wars, and I remember for the longest time I was very proud of my Star Wars collection. I still actually have my entire Star Wars collection to this day. Lots of action figures, not only from the original movies, but even from the later prequels, and all sorts of collectibles. But now that I'm an adult, all they pretty much do is sit in a closet somewhere, and I don't even look at them. So I am thinking about finally listing them and selling them on eBay in the near future. And that's actually something that I'm hoping to accomplish before I move out of this place, because one thing I definitely do not enjoy doing is moving and taking all of my stuff and moving it. So I would rather sell as much stuff as I possibly can, and then have it out of my possession before I'm finally moving somewhere. So maybe even within the next couple months, that part of my life will really be eliminated, because I won't even have the merchandise to look at to be able to cherish it. But all throughout high school, we were big into Star Wars, and we were certainly into video games. As all of the latest systems came out, we would usually get them. So even though I had begun with the Nintendo, which we did say to my mom, if she bought us that Nintendo system, we would never have her buy us any other system. And she definitely held to that. She never bought us another system from that point on. So if we earned allowance or something, we could get the systems that way. So I got the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64. We tried some other systems that weren't made by Nintendo, like the Atari Lynx and the Panasonic 3DO. But then I also got the GameCube and the Wii. Right now, the Nintendo Wii is the last system I bought. I have not yet bought a Wii U or a Nintendo Switch, and I'm not exactly sure when I might, because I'm actually more fond of the classic games, and I'm not so much into the realistic 3D games of this generation. I actually enjoy the more simple 2D and more simplified games. But in addition to that, whenever I was in senior high, I got interested in track. My brother was a shot putter and a discus thrower, and he got me into that. So throughout senior high, I also tried that for a while. I got pretty good at shot putting. I think I was able to shot put it over 40 feet a couple of times, but my brother actually broke the school record at some point. I think his farthest throw was 64 feet and maybe 4 or more inches, and I think to this day he might still have the school record, unless it finally got recently broken. He might know that better than me. But that was whenever I was actually big and bulky. And then it would be my junior to senior year that I remember I wanted to tone down. And I had used to be 200 pounds at that point. But then in the summer of junior to my senior year, I ate a lot less, I ate a lot more healthy, and I worked out a lot. I would ride my bicycle sometimes 30 or 40 miles whenever it was summer break and I didn't have a job. You know, I could go for 30 or 40 mile bike rides no problem, and I would do it about 5 days a week. And I would also run around the big field that was behind Nana and Pa's house. And in that short 3 months, I had lost, over 40 pounds. I had been at my highest 200, and then I go back my senior year at only 155. Obviously, since that time, I was able to keep the weight off for a while, but then through a lot of stresses that came into my life, especially the biggest one, losing you, I did put on more weight. But that's why I'm doing these walks now, hoping to get back into shape, hoping to approach life in a more healthy manner, get back to where I was whenever I was at my best and feeling the greatest. So it was actually in my senior year that I didn't really want to do shot put or discus throwing anymore, especially since I had lost weight and didn't really have the muscle power behind it anymore. So that was the year that I really got into singing. One of my favorite things that I loved to do was sing, and I had actually sung all throughout my childhood. Even in elementary school, the very first chorus I was a part of was the children's chorus choir. And I remember I was given a lot of solo performances. I always think I did well at the solo performances. We still have a lot of them recorded on cassette tapes, which again you might be able to learn about if you look out on the internet, because these days usually if things are recorded it's on CDs, but even CDs aren't a thing anymore. It's usually just recorded straight to a hard drive as an MP3 file, and you might be able to carry it around on a flash drive of sorts. But then even in junior high, there were a couple of performances I was in. I was in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was a famous movie that you can look up now, also made by Disney. It was first made by C.S. Lewis, but I played the main role of Edmund in that. And I was in The Music Man and Give My Regards to Broadway. But senior year was whenever I really joined just about every single chorus choir that existed. So there was madrigals, triple trio. I don't think I was in the triple trio. I was in everything but actually, I may have been in the triple trio. Basically, if there was a chorus that boys were allowed in, I was in. So I was in every single chorus except for like the women's chorus. And that was probably the funnest year of my life. Just going around and singing. And again, I was close friends with a lot of people, but not really close friends. It was basically whenever I was there, we would talk a lot and hang out. But outside of that, I never really hung out with any of them except for Luke and Jared. And even to this day, I am very blessed because I still hang out with Luke and Jared. Even though we are now 35, 36 years old, we still live relatively close to each other, and every week or so we'll get together and hang out, and we'll still play video games and watch movies and talk about stuff. It's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, a lot of people can't say that. Usually whenever they leave school, they also have to leave all of their friends behind. But yeah, that's just a basic history of my life. Again, throughout elementary school and high school, to give you a little background of the kind of guy I am. And I do wonder how close your life might parallel mine. Because whenever I got to last see you, it seemed that you had a lot of me in you. And I do wonder just how much of me might actually be kept in you. And I am hoping that someday I'll be able to find out your life story, and we'll be able to connect again, even though that was so unfortunately taken away from us for reasons that I hope you will one day be able to understand, and determine yourself as to why these forces separated us completely out of my control. But until that day comes, I plan to make more videos. I anxiously await the day when you will contact me and we'll be able to establish a relationship at that time. So for now, I'm signing off. I love you, Luke, and I hope to hear from you soon.